Yep. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well,
Like, I got one so soon. Well, I mean, I don't know. I've made it quite a few years without getting one, I suppose. But then
yeah,
there's my dad, who's never gotten one. It's like, this ain't fair.
right. Yeah, there was a point where I got a call, like I got the notice several times and I had to call in, but I never actually had to go. And then um, the cat really wants to hang out. Then I actually got one where I called in and I got called and I actually went down there and I had to sit down there. I think it was 3 days in a row, but we never actually made it into the courtroom um,
Oh.
because they settled the case while the jury selection was happening. So,
Uh,
um, so with a little luck, you'll call in and they'll never ask you to come down.
yeah, I mean, my girlfriend was saying too that if it conflicts with something you have going on for your selected dates, that they might just dismiss you anyway.
Yeah, yeah, you can.
And I think it's what is it, October 13th or something and 14th, which I don't know if that's our Pack Expo days.
I don't remember the days actually, but
Yeah, I can't either, but
yeah.
I figured I could use that as an excuse.
Right, you can always try. If it's a work thing or travel for work, usually those are pretty easy. It's the
Yeah,
people that say, well, I got to get my hair cut. You know,
yeah,
that's a problem.
yeah.
So, all right. So here we are on the live chart. New recording going.
Let me get back to my computer. Got a good old wireless headset, so
Ah, yeah, that's the way to be.
spent way too much on it, but it's nice.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, gotta love it.
All right, I'm ready to go.
So this is nothing you haven't seen before, but what I've done for today is I've set it up just on a two charts side by side. One is the daily chart on the left, and the right is the 39-minute chart, right?
Mhm.
So you can see on the right, as I move my cursor through all those days, or through all those 39-minute blocks, then it takes a while and it'll finally move on the left to the appropriate cursor, right? So
Ah,
the cursors are synced, right?
mhm.
And so now I'm going to go over to the left-hand chart, and you see as I move around, notice how you can see the horizontal cursor, but you can't see the vertical.
Yeah.
Well, obviously those time frames aren't lined up, right?
Yep.
So what I'm going to do for today, because we're going to kind of try to go through some of this, and I'm going to show you some little techniques, but I'm going to set this option right here to time. And what that does is when I click over here, or on one chart, it lines you up in time with the other chart, even though it's a different time zone. So watch what happens when I click right here. The chart on the right now
Ah.
lines up, and it's never perfect. It usually lines up like right on the left side or right side, but then you
Mhm.
can kind of come over here and do one of these, and then
Refine it a little bit.
right. So because as we start talking about these manipulations and everything, it's one thing to see it on the daily chart. It's another thing to see what it looks like intraday for the refinement concept, right?
Mhm.
Because, for example, as we talk about these things and we know that there's a manipulation, like I said right here, I said, here's the manipulation, and then I would buy somewhere above that, right?
Yep.
Well, sure enough, I mean, look what happened, right? That's a wonderful thing, especially in hindsight. But notice where it is on the right, right? So if I'm looking at it here and I'm trying to decide if that is a good day, maybe at the end of the day I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll try to buy in now uh, instead of waiting till if it goes up above here, right?
Mhm.
One, I can tell you, I'm going to show you how to use these, like this orange line I showed you, and these other things. I'll show you those next time.
Okay.
Um, but notice what you can do if you look here and I come over here where that chart is, I'm on that day right up until, or does it switch days? There we go. Okay, so between that candle and that candle is when it switches days,
Hmm.
right? So you can look at the lower time frame and try to decide on the lower time frame, is it a good entry or not? Not just on the daily, right? Because a lot of people, like if we're at work on this day and we say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to buy in on this somewhere above this high. So you can put in an order that will automatically do that for you while you're at work. You can say, okay, close of that day is 38.06. I'm going to buy in at 38.20, right?
Hmm.
And you can put in your order, and that's called a limit order, and it'll do that for you automatically, right? Or I also told you sometimes what I'll do is at the end of the day, I'll look at my phone and I'll say, here's an order I'm interested in. What is it doing? Maybe I don't want to wait till tomorrow because sometimes tomorrow is a big gap up, right? You know,
Hmm.
and if you miss the gap, well, you still can make money on the trade, but that's where a lot of money can be made, right? The
Right.
closer you get to the bottom, the more money you can make when it moves. But you also keep a smaller risk, but of course you may have to try it 2 or 3 times to get it right, right?
Yeah.
But so at any rate, on the lower time frame, you can see as I'm looking at this happen, I can try to determine what's happening on the lower time frame with the same techniques and go, well, the daily time frame is setting up pretty good. Oh, look here, I broke above this zone and I got this big long candle. I think I'm going to take the risk that tomorrow it will go above that, right?
Hmm.
And you could buy in at the end of the day here because of the way the intraday looks, right? Um, because obviously this is just a smaller version of this, right? So,
Hmm.
there is no guarantees that that's going to continue to play out, right? Because the reality is this is the big clue right here because you come up above this daily and you see this
Yeah.
big long one. So look where my horizontal is on that big clue long bar. Look where it is on the left.
Yeah.
It's damn near what I told you, right?
Yeah.
So so
Pretty much.
you know so some people who don't have these tools are just knowing, hey, if I buy above that, it's safer. And when you
Hmm.
have these tools, you now have a couple of things going on, and you can go, whew, okay. Instead of buying 10 shares, I feel much better. I'm going to buy 100 shares, right? And
Hmm.
that's adjusting your risk tolerance, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Maybe we should start. Yeah, let's start at the bottom over here, and we'll just kind of work our way through the ups and downs all the way.
Okay.
What time is it? 9:58. Okay, I got a little bit of time yet. All right. So one thing I told you about is we know this price is coming down, and let's say we're not in a trade, right? We're looking for it, and it's bouncing around in this blue. Okay. Well, at the close of this day, you're thinking, oh shit, it went through this blue bar, right? So maybe it's not going to go. Maybe it's not such a strong zone, right? But of course, we know that right here, you can see it. It was bouncing along, trying to get over, and then all of a sudden it went through it, and a couple of times back in it, right? So this is the refinement of this little piece right here, right? And and then of course this piece here. But this cat, he's not going to be happy until he's hanging out, just walking on the keyboard. So here, this wick, it went down. Certainly it's below that one, but it's not below anything in particular, right? It's not like the previous candle is right there, right? Um, Let's just see if we can see. Yeah, see, it's just too far away. So I'm just
Yeah.
not gonna. Yes, Kitty. Yes, yes, yes. I see you.
Are you
Wait.
gonna be done and ready?
Yes. We're leaving at 10:30, right?
Yeah, Julie's ready.
Okay. Yeah, Gabe and I are almost done. Probably 15 minutes. Okay. So, okay, so that wick is there. We only know that it came through that zone. The next day, so we take no action, right? The next day, what we see is this candle happen. Notice that wick goes down just ever so slightly below that previous one,
Hmm.
right? So that is indeed a manipulation, just like if it went down farther. All it has to
Yeah.
do is go down there just a little bit, and then notice it closed up above that close. So
Hmm.
it not only closed up above that low, but it closed up above that close, right? That is a true another form of manipulation. Somebody might call that an equal low, right? So when things when things tend to be equal, if you run into candles that either the lows or the closes are very much very similar,
Hmm.
you call those equal highs, equal lows, equals. That is just as good information as if you do a wick right here, right? If you wick it,
Hmm.
um, because now you know that for whatever reason that area has proved itself. So now here again, that happens. When that happens, now you say, hey, it's not in this zone anymore, but I've now seen that there's a higher probability here. So you might decide to take that risk early on and go somewhere above this high, like right in there, and get in, right? Or you might wait for this whole day to play out and then move on, right?
Do you typically, or is it safer to buy in like above that wick of
Absolutely.
the of that last red?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So now you can see my little green arrow here?
Hmm.
That's my true signal, and that true signal happens at the close of this day, right? So,
Hmm.
and that takes into account what we've talked about. It takes into account these other lines that I told you I'd show you next time, right?
And that green arrow is something you manually put on?
That's total manual. I don't
Okay.
know if I've got the coding skills to do that.
Okay.
It sounds simple, but
Oh yeah.
well, let me say it this way. There is a hard code to it, but there's also a little subjectivity to deciding on those
Hmm.
combination of events. So the hard coding wouldn't have worked here, right? But
Sure.
um, the secondary backup would have. So when we start showing you that, you'll see some of that.
Mhm.
Um, but so let's just say this is definitely one of those key towards the end of the days. I would have been looking here and going. In fact, I was looking here at this time,
Mhm.
but I missed it at the end of the day because I was busy. Um, but in the last 10 minutes of the day, I would have definitely been looking at this as a very high probability long trade to get into at the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
So now you can see not much happened the next day, and it actually went up to there and down to there and closed back up high, right?
Mhm.
Well, once you've done this, you've reduced the probability of an imminent change, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it won't happen, but you've reduced the probability, and especially since it's happening at this zone, right? And the fact
Mhm.
that you're up near the top of it, this is a drop base rally, right?
Yeah.
And so, and now what you can say is, let's look at the wick here, because now this wick went up above and closed below this over here, right?
Mhm.
Well, that's potentially a sign that the down move that you've just seen here, from here to here, is not over. Because why? Because it went up, found some sellers, and it ended up down here. Well, what you can see is, guess what? The next day it actually did go down to here, but it closed up there. So the down move wasn't over. It was just very short,
Uh-huh.
right? And let's click over here, right? So right in here, you see what's happened. It's come down back into that zone, but out again, right?
Hmm.
Well, how in this case, let's say you bought in on this day and it actually is down a little bit because you would have put your buy order in above the high of this. So you'd have bought in here and immediately you'd have been missing money, right?
Yeah.
Well, but is that a problem or is that just part of the game? That's part of the game because what's just happened here is you've got several signs of strength here. You've got a drop base rally, you've got my green arrow, which I'll show you later, right? You've got proof that this is absorption, right?
Hmm.
So this is a normal day not to be concerned about. And it proves itself. So, but your stop loss right now, remember, is down below here because we bought in above this day. So down below this day or below that blue line is where your stop loss is, somewhere in there, right?
Okay.
Mine would have been right below, somewhere
So
in
we're
there,
assuming we bought in after that green candles day was over.
right? Because I got the signal here, and let's say at
Yep.
the end of the day you come home and you look. So the next morning you put in a stop limit order to buy above the high of that wick, which would have been right
Yep.
there.
Okay.
Okay. So
Yep.
that you
Yep.
buy in and the next morning, you're at work, it's bouncing around all day. You come home at the end of the day and, oh, I've lost $2, right? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But now you got to say, is that a problem or not? Right?
Hmm.
And the problem is, well, it looks kind of scary because it came all the way down here, but it also ended up there,
Yeah.
right? You know, but
There's also those other signs of strength.
yes, so since we never would have bought in if we didn't have those signs of strength.
Yeah.
So this did not change that at all. It just told me, hey, it right now it definitely says that this down move isn't over, but I'm within all this and I got these signs of strength. So what happens? It comes in the next day, it comes down to here, and just out of coincidence, notice it's about halfway through that blue zone and it's about halfway through this candle.
Hmm.
The 50% of almost anything, you will be amazed at how important that place is. it
Mm.
the 50% of the zones, 50% of candles, 50% of almost anything is is just amazing how often it's an important area, right?
Hmm.
But anyway, and that's a Fibonacci number as well. So come on, there we go. So it did come down and it continued back up, and you know, strangely, it broke back above this one and closed back below here, right? Again,
Hmm.
another little manipulation, but it did move up. Again, the signs of strength in the background are still there. So this would tell me the down move probably still isn't over because we did not exceed that and stay above it. Well, guess what? Look at what it did. It came back down to there, right?
Hmm.
So the down move, there was still a little selling that happened, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You get this big monster. Okay, now you feel really good, right? There's no doubt
Yeah.
because you come home, woohoo, you got a big
Hmm.
percentage going on. Next day you get one of these. Now you're scared. Why? Because you got a big manipulation going on up here. Go real high, come down, and close below.
Hmm.
Well, what happens there? Whew, I don't know. Me, I move my stop loss up, and I'll usually move it up somewhere in about the middle of this candle because this is a huge run, right?
Yeah.
There's other ways to determine where to put that. And if you'll notice where my cursor is on the right-hand screen, right?
Hmm.
And if I come over here, notice this is still in that day, right? So
Yeah.
I might put my stop loss, and we know that's a sign of strength, right? I might put my
Yeah.
stop loss right below here, right? Which notice is about 2/3 of the way down that candle.
Hmm.
Okay. So at the beginning of,
Coincidentally, right where that big red
exactly,
candle
yeah,
goes down to.
it's strange, isn't it? So, you know, so that's one way to put your stop loss, right? But that's based on this day. The other thing to remember is down here, you have already made your initial buy zone, right, on this day, and you've put your stop loss down here, right? So if you're really paranoid, you could be putting your stop loss here just to make sure you get every dollar you can, right? But when you get a signal like this, and it happens to be at a zone, you're expecting this price to go farther. So you probably would keep your stop loss here and maybe you move it up a little bit, but not necessarily up to there.
Okay.
Or another way to manage risk is to say you buy 100 shares. You can say and this is something I like to do, either divide it into thirds, like say 25%, 25%, 50%. You could say, okay, I'm going to put a stop loss right here with 25% of the shares that I bought. Therefore, if it pulls back, it'll sell 25% of those shares, but I will be in profit for those 25% of the shares, right? Which really does what? In your overall initial order, the shares that are open, you really bought at a better price, right? Because you've just
Yeah.
added profit to your account, right?
hmm
And then you can say, okay, let's say it gets down to, um, another 2/3 of the way where I bought in. That's where you'd sell another 25%, right? And
hmm
if it gets all the way down to your stop loss, which is down here somewhere, then you sell out your other 50%. So
hmm
that way, even if things go against you, right, you've got a layered stop loss,
Kind of balances out.
kind of balances out. So here, let's say you did that. You would definitely be out of 25% of your shares, but not 50, right?
Yep.
It would bounce up. And the whole time, again, we're looking at new support stuff, right? New zones, right?
hmm
So we've got signs of strength, pulling back and finding another zone. That's a sign of strength, right?
hmm
And oops, I screwed that up. So we come over here, we bounce up, it fails to exceed that, right? Notice there's a little manipulation there and it comes down again to the exact same
hmm
area, but it still doesn't get to your 50% stop loss, right?
hmm
Right? So now you're still live with 75% of your trade. And look at, lo and behold, now we get a nice boom up, but it still doesn't quite make that. Here we
Yeah.
get a big manipulation down, right?
hmm
But we have a whole story behind us. We've come up and we've definitely proved that this is now solid, right? Doesn't mean
Yeah.
it can't be taken out, but I'm I'm not paranoid and my next stop is way down here, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it does pull back, and then the next day comes up, and here we clear that, and that. We have now removed all those manipulations from from the uh, from the game plan, right?
hmm
So now we're definitely happy, and you could at this point be looking at this and saying, "Hey, do I want to actually buy more, or do I just keep my trade going?"
hmm
All possible. Because now, if you'll notice the orange line, we're going to learn about that later, but you notice how here it kind of crossed over it a couple of times. Now here it's pretty happy above it, right?
hmm
All right. So that's another little fancy schmancy thing that is so incredibly simple. You will be
hmm
surprised. So um, keeping above that. So now I'm in the trade. It's going day by day. You look at it and you're asking yourself those same questions over and over and over again, right? And since we're just about out of time, I'm not going to go into any more depth, but
Sure.
take this concept and follow that all the way through, all the way up, all the way down to where we are today, right? Just with those
hmm
same questions. Where was the manipulation? Where was the support? What happened? Where is my stop loss, right?
hmm
And I will tell you that in this case, like if this comes up and does one of these, and I find a new support like this, I'm definitely moving my stop losses up higher to keep more of this profit, right?
Yeah.
No doubt. So I might move my 50% up to somewhere below here And unfortunately, I can tell you that would have taken me out, but that actually is good, right? So I would have been
Mhm.
just below here, and I probably would have had the next 25% take me out here, and maybe my last 50 might have been down here, right? So
Mhm.
as it gets down to here, this would have taken me out. Now I'm only in 50% of my trade, right?
Mhm.
But but so you only made from here to there with 50% of your money, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, oops. Again, I
Oh,
personally, huh? Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I personally don't like that much risk. I notice where my red arrow is.
Mhm.
My shit would have been gone the next day, right? Okay. So right about here is where I'd be getting out because I've developed
Yeah.
this. I know what it means, right? Or I know that the probability is with me there. So the reality is in this zone, right? We would have gotten in, let's say, on that major signal somewhere in there, right about 3870. Let's just make it
Mhm.
easy, 3870. And we
Sure.
would have gotten out at the latest at 40, well, 4210. Let's make it that, right?
Sure.
So $50, right?
Mhm.
Um, you know, and so practice that. It's going to lead to a shit ton of questions, right? Um,
I'm sure.
because you're going to get into areas like this, right? And take that wicking very seriously because here you notice it went up and closed below it. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? Look what it did. It went down, right?
Yeah.
But here it went down and popped back up below the low. It didn't make it up above the close, but it might be up below the low. That tells you the up move isn't over. Oh, wait, look, it
Mhm.
went way up to here, but it closed down here. The down move isn't over. Oh, look, it went down here and it didn't close up above there. That tells you the down move probably isn't over. Well, guess what? Here was the close. It went down to there, right?
Yeah.
And then it went up. So this this concept, it was very clear here, okay? But
Yeah.
you will find areas where you'll get two, three candles in a row that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't need to make sense every bar, okay?
Yeah.
But it is the way when you're trying to get into a trade, you're looking for as much information as possible that's real, right? And it
Mhm.
comes straight from the price action because price action is where it's at. That's the information. That's the hot setup. Indicators are great. And when I show you these, you're going to like those too.
Yeah.
But the price action is the front lines. Indicators are derivatives. All the math is based on history, not
Yeah.
today, right?
Right.
So, but there's a lot of cool indicators out there for sure. But
Mhm.
um, I use them as a secondary purpose, not a primary purpose, right?
Okay.
All right. All right. I got to go.
Yeah.
So,
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate
yeah,
it.
have a great day, and I'll
You
upload
too.
that stuff when I get home later.
Cool. Sounds good.
See you. Bye.
All right. Bye.